Here we go. Oh, I was having a little issue there. I nearly had a little wobbly. Good morning. Got a big session. Um, how's everyone going? Good to be here on a Friday morning, or it could be a Thursday evening, depending on where you are. Hi Shane. Hi Michelle. Good to see you in here. Hopefully others will turn up. I'd love to see others in here. I hope everyone's having a good week. Just going to sort out my blinds. It's a little bit glary. All right. I am just going to get straight into the content today, mostly because I've got some deadlines. I'm really tight at the today. It's going to be a really cool session. All right. I love this session on family entanglements, and it's going to be a great session. We're going to talk about some things that are outside of the normal worldview of what people think we are. And remember that, like this point of this point, the point of this work is really to have you step into the creative orientation. So you just continue to create whatever it is you want in life, right? We're not here to problem solve, right? You are the superconscious creator. So we're reminding you of that and moving you into what you truly are and to regain the power. Okay, so today is going to be like I'm excited. It's going to be exciting, and as we collapse into our individual perspective into a family as part of a bigger picture, right? You learn that you're an individual, but you're connected to a family. You look like them, and you act like them, and so much stuff is passed on into family lines. Like health is a big one. We all know this. Now, Bert Hellinger, and you can look him up if you want to. He's done some amazing work with African families and work on what's passed down. And what he found was that there's 7 generations of trauma passed down through the family coding. And you might ask, how does that work, right? How's that happened? And it's pretty startling thing to consider and understand, but it's really logical. All right, it's really logical. Why would a generation learn something again and again, right, over and over? And when a trauma is created, it gets coded into the field. So when the next generation comes along, they get given a preset coding. And this is very unique to us and your own family. And if you think about women, right, you have the eggs for the next generation and the generation after that, right? And it's super amazing. So what happens to you, especially trauma, right? It'll be passed down, right? It'll be passed down. So, if I asked you, and if you're around my age, or even if you're in your 30s, where were you on September 11? All right. Where were you? September 11, 2001. Or when you first heard about the COVID-19 virus. All right. I bet you can remember. Who can remember that? Who remembers where they were or what they were doing when you first heard about September 11, or when you first heard about the coronavirus? Just type in the chat box if you remember. You can either type a yes, or you could even type in what you were even doing. I remember exactly when I heard about September 11 and was watching the footage. I know exactly where I was, who I was with, roughly what time it was. And it's the same with the COVID-19, right? Fascinating. Fascinating, right? And it doesn't seem to make sense, does it? Doesn't seem to make sense or very important to remember this. September 11 was driving my daughter to school. Shane says yes. Yeah. But it doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, it doesn't seem important to remember that. It doesn't seem important at all. particularly, you know, compared to, you can compare that with, say, what happened last year in your life. Who even remembers what happened last Tuesday? I mean, I'd have to go back. I'd have to look at my lenses probably, but I literally don't remember. All right, interesting, isn't it? See, the stronger the emotion, the more likely the unconscious will remember it, and the emotion gets coded up and stored in the field and remains as instructions, right? It sits there in the field for safety. See, a person may pass away that had the conscious memory, but the emotional signature gets passed through. And a great example would be the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors from World War II. There's been extensive studies on them, whereby they experience memories and trauma from the extermination and concentration camps that the Nazis had set up. And these get passed down in family dynamics and through family rules, right? And we have to, right? We have to for the sake of survival, right? We must learn what came through before and before that. All right, if you're out in the jungle and you don't get passed down the information about a poisonous tree or plant or berry or fruit, right? And you're there as a little one and you eat it, right? It's going to have dire consequences, right? If you don't get passed down stuff, you're open to things not going particularly well. Does that all make sense? So it's really, really important, right? But it's really also very likely that all of us in our dormant memories have a lot of different fields and structures and rules, right? Family rules that we're not conscious of all the time. And they create massive resistance right now in the present time for people. And so let's look a little bit at Hellinger's rules, because this work is fascinating. Okay, so I'll get into the notes. All right. So there are 3 unsaid rules that are operating in every family system, right? Family rules are the rules that are unspoken, right? That are put into place by either mum or dad or both. And the first one is, no one in this family will have a better experience of life than I have had or am having. Now, what this means is that if your family rules is a hard worker, no matter how much money you make, you will always feel like you have to be hard working. The second big rule is no one in this family is going to have a better experience of themselves than I have of me. So if mum or dad can't feel worthy, you're not allowed to feel worthy, right? You're not allowed to turn up home all happy when everyone else is sad. Now, the third big rule is no one in this family is going to have a better experience of me than I have of me. So if mum can't love herself, you're not allowed to love her. If dad doesn't feel successful, you're not allowed to experience him as successful. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, now, like they're the big 3 family rules that Hellinger had discovered. Now, the healthier the family, right, the weaker the rules are. In a not so healthy family, these rules can be nearly explicit, right? In seriously ill families, these rules are enforced openly, right? And these rules exist regardless. In addition to these standard human rules, right, family rules, there may be more specific variations on these themes that are unique to a particular family, but function in nearly the same way as the above rules. As a real life example, you can only love one person at a time. That is such a rule, right? You literally have a set rule that this is allowed and that's not allowed, right? Now, children are compelled by both love and fear, right, to belong, right, to belong with or honor their parents and their family's origin, right, of up to 7 generations. Pardon me. This obligation to honor and belong with one's family, it's enforced neurological, right? It's not dependent on or subject to any kind of rational override. Basically, you have an innate desire to belong to your family, right? The biological cells that you actually came from. And this is really important to recognize, right? Just remember that we're just a collection of about, I think, 3 billion cells from memory. And we were once connected to the cells of our parents and those before them and before them. So you are quantumly entangled with your parents in an absolute way, right? You really, really got to get this, right? We know, right? What we know is that once a cell is entangled, right? Once a cell is entangled in the field, it's always entangled. Even if you remove that cell or cells from its group of cells, right? There is no way not to be entangled. And it's science, right? So you have your own unique field, the closest of which is to your siblings. So you're quantumly entangled with your ancestors from generation and generation, storing information that was created centuries ago, right? And you can track trauma from 7 generations ago and how it has affected each subsequent generation. Now, Bert Hellinger, he was only able to study 7, but it's got to be heaps more, right? It's got to be 7 back from that 7 and 7 back from there and back from there. But he only was able to study 7. So when we do the behavior that allows us to belong, we feel innocent, right? When we do the behavior that violates belonging, we feel guilty. And there are no exceptions, right? When a child cannot heal the family, the child will take on the family's pain in order to help them, to honor them, and to be one of them, right? All human beings become caught in entanglement of multiple, overlapping, conflicting obligations or belonging, right? And it works with household chores and physical stuff, but not with emotions, right? And as Hellinger says, right, in a family of thieves, the child who will not steal has a guilty conscience. Another example would be in a family of hard workers, the child that retires early feels guilty. In a family of negative naysayers, the positive child feels guilty. Right now, if you use the experience of guilt or innocence as your moral compass, you will live a life that confirms all of the beliefs of the family system that you were born into. Interesting, hey? Very interesting. Now, on suffering obligations of love. So issues which people struggle with in life are sometimes and are often not their own. Rather, they will result from an attempt on the part of the child acting out of love to resolve the family system issue. And this is done, it's done unconsciously, right? And the result is the child becomes entangled, right? And begins to live out the fate of the other, right, or past family members. They can either be living or dead because it's coded up in the field. Now, resolution requires that that responsibility be given back to that person, whether they're living or dead, right, to whom it belongs. And there's a quote by Cusker Fayette, 1977. He was a social psychologist, and he says, you know, my experience is that the source of suffering is in the ways we suffer for other people in an unworkable attempt to say that I love you. So when we create, right, or insist on having suffering contracts, we accept obligations of love. Our contract becomes one of suffering contracts of love, right, or SOL. Living with suffering obligations of love causes us to be completely, right, suffering in obligation of love in terms of our access to freedom, power, and change. Now, the most common obligations, suffering ones, take forms like these. Dad, I'll feel a heavy burden so yours will be lighter. Mum, I'll be your victim so you won't have the pain of being other people's perpetrator. Dad, I'll be a perpetrator like you so you will feel less guilty. Mum, I'll be a better victim than you so that the perpetrators, they'll abuse me instead of you. Dad, I'll be a victim like you so that it will seem like you had no other choice. Dad, I can see you're not feeling worthy, so I won't feel worthy, right? Not to show you up. And they're just some examples. So like imagine you're a baby looking up at your parents and going, I'll do all this stuff, right? Or as a toddler, I'll do all this stuff to help you so you can be okay. What it's really saying is that your parents aren't capable. It's disempowering. I'll fix you. I'll solve your problems. And unconsciously we do this, right? We set up beliefs and structures as children to try and solve the family's pain. Now, this is the mechanism by which abuse, addiction, and other suffering obligations of love get passed down through generations. All right, this is how it happens. And the strength of the pattern of undesirable behavior is in direct proportion to the strength of love between children and their parents. The reasons why generations have suffered is so the children learn and profit from that, right? The best way that you can honor family is to be the one who actually creates a life they love. See, they suffered and they always say, every generation, they always say, I want my children to have it better. I want them to have it better than me. Is it true? All parents, right? I want my children to have it better than me, right? I want them to have it better. The one way you can honor all the generations, all the generational pain before you and all the struggle from the generations before you is to not try and fix the family. Instead, to say thank you. And because of you, I'm now going to experience myself to the fullest. You don't honor them by being the little baby or child trying to go back and fix adult problems. You must understand there's no way to belong more or to belong less to your family. You're still connected to it no matter what happens, right? You're quantumly connected, all right? Super, super, super cool stuff to learn. Who's enjoying this so far? It's really important to get a handle on this and to really see what goes on. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's fascinating stuff. And if you get a chance, go and have a read of Bert Hellinger's work. It's absolutely mind-blowing and really fascinating. So we're going to do a process, right? And it's called the family dinner table. And what we're going to do is we're going to uncover the 3 big family rules. All right, your 3 big family rules. All right, and you suffer whatever the suffering obligation of love is, you know, toward your family or your parents, right? To your mum or your dad. All right. So it's a big process. Okay. And then what we're going to do after that, we're going to do a process called big ones, little ones. Right. And we're going to hand that obligation back. We're going to hand the contract back. All right. So it's a really cool session. And if you're watching the replay, awesome. You're going to love this. Okay. You're going to love this. So first question is what's an end result? What is an end result that you want to work on? And you can either type it in the chat box, right? Or you can just type a 1 in the chat box when you've got one. And make sure it's a true choice. Make sure it's a true choice. So just type a 1 in, let me know if you got it, or you can type it in the chat box. Either way is fine. Either way is all good. Just let me know if you've got a true choice that we'll be working on, and then we can move forward into the next part. Shane, just choose one of your core 4. Living a life that you love, that would be fine. Or living your true purpose and nature. One of those would be fine. Or being the predominant creative force, or creating health and vitality. Just choose one. All right, cool. So I want to ask some questions around that. So what will having that do for others and for you? If you have this true choice, what will having that, what will it do for others, and what will it do for you? And just write that down, or you can write in the chat box. If you have this, if you create it, what will that do for others, and what will that do for you? And just write that down, or you can put in the chat box. Just let me know when you've written that down. Just, you can type in a number 2. Health and vitality, I'll be able to see my kids get older. Got it. All right. So we're going to just step into the feeling and emotion of the end result and what it would look like. So just go ahead and close your eyes. And just stepping into your heart, just going into your heart, and choosing this end result. And really, really choosing this end result. What would it be like to have this? Just stepping in there. What would it be like to have created this end result? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What would it be like? The emotion, the feeling, the vision, and all the things you'll be doing now this is true. And and think of all the ways that you can enjoy this end result now that you've created it. All of the ways that you can enjoy it and share it. All the things you'll be doing now that this is true. Awesome. And breathing all of that in and opening your eyes, coming back into the room. Next, compared to that, what's it like now? And just write it down. Or you can type in the chat box. Compared to that, what's it like now? So when you think about your end result, just read it and presence it. What's in the way? What stops you from having that right now? And just write it all down. Maybe there's some emotions there. Maybe there's some beliefs. What's your story? What do you think is in the way? What stops you from just having it right now? Maybe you got some beliefs about others or the world. I don't know. Maybe there's something from your past. Just write it all down. And once you've written it all down, just let me know in the chat box. Just give me a yes, and we'll move into the next part, the family dinner table. And we're going to uncover what's in the way, which would be really, really cool. It's a super, super cool process. All right. Awesomeness. If you're watching the replay, make sure you write it all down as much as you can. All right, so we're ready to move into this. We're going to uncover what's in the way. Right, this is a really cool process, right, called the family dinner table. Well, we're going to uncover. We're going to uncover. And when you look at what's in the way, what you've written down, right, what's probably the main thing? What do you think's the main emotion or the main belief or main problem that keeps you from having this end result? And I want you just to allow that to show up. Really just tune in. What's that one big thing? That big emotion or that big fear, and just tune into that. Maybe because something happened in the past that, you know, it stops you or whatever it is. I want you just to tune in and just allow that to show up. And you may have written it down. What is that? And just allow it to be there. And as you do that, just go ahead and close your eyes. Go ahead and close your eyes, and let's choose to get the most out of this. Let's choose to really uncover these big family rules and uncover the suffering obligations that we've set up from when we were very little. And so with your eyes closed, I want you to go ahead and go up above your timeline and looking to the past, and I want you to grow yourself young. Grow yourself young all the way back down through your 20s, through your teens. Grow yourself all the way back to somewhere between the ages of 4 and 7. Make that 3 and 7. All the way back. And I want you to imagine you're going all the way back to the family dinner table or a picnic or a barbecue or a restaurant, but the family's there, and just notice who's there. Notice who's there. And I want you to observe this table, this setting, from a surveillance camera view. Just observe who's there and how it is back then from a surveillance camera view. Now, if your mum's there, or someone who represented your mum, who was a mother figure, what's in mum's front compartment that we're allowed to know? How old is mum? Just notice, how old is she at this setting, this dinner table? And what's in mum's front compartment that we are allowed to know? And now what's in mum's back compartment that we aren't allowed to know, but we do? You know, something they're afraid is true about them. And they're looking over at Dad from this surveillance camera view. What's in Dad's? Just notice his age. Notice how old he is. And what's in Dad's front compartment that we are allowed to know? What are we allowed to know about him? And what's in Dad's back compartment that we aren't allowed to know, but we do, right? Something that he's afraid is true about him. Something we're not supposed to know, right? But we do. And now imagining yourself now, you're sitting down there, back down in there, you're out of the surveillance view and you're somewhere between the age of 3 and 7 and you're down at the dinner table and there you are, mum and dad are there or whoever represented the father and mother figure, and maybe there's other family members there. You're sitting across from mum and dad, and I want you to grow your mum and dad, your parents, or your caregivers, whoever they were. I want you to regress them to their emotional age. But I want you to keep them wearing adult clothing. All right, it might be a bit funny, but grow them to their emotional age, but still wearing adult clothing. Good. Now, what are the 3 big family rules? What are the 3 big family rules? Now that you've got those, I want you to make an I-beam connection to mum. So mum's sitting over there at her emotional age, wearing adult clothing. I want you to look across as that younger version of you and make an I-beam connection to mum. What is uploading to mum and how is it received? What is she getting from you? What do you want most for mum? And now make an I-beam connection to dad. Sitting over there at his emotional age at the table, still wearing the adult clothing. You're there as a toddler. Make an I-beam connection to dad. What are you uploading to dad? And how is it received? What is he getting from you? What do you want most for dad? Now that you've got what you want most for mum, so going back, what do you want most for mum? What is the suffering contract with her? And what do you want most for dad? And what is the suffering contract with him? And I want you to open your eyes, come on back into the room, and I want you to write that down. Write down what you got. And you can type it in the chat box. Type it in the chat box. What did you get? What do you want most for mum? What do you want most for dad? Right? And what's the suffering contract? And type it in because we can really uncover it if you don't already have it. I know one of mine was, I'll be smarter than mum so I can answer everything for her so she doesn't look silly. That was one of mine. I will be, another one was I'll be worse than dad. I'll be crazier than dad. I'll be just so loose growing up so he won't look bad. I'll be the one who looks bad. That was another one of mine. So just type in the chat box, what did you want most for mum? What did you want most for dad? What's the contract? What did you make up? So I don't know, it could be I wanted mum to be happy, so I wouldn't be happy. I will look after everyone so mum doesn't have to and she'll be happy. Got it, Michelle. Wow. Yeah. I won't be proud of where I'm from, so dad feel like it's not just him. I'll be unsure of myself and my worth, so mum feels worthy. Got it. Brilliant. Brilliant. Fascinating stuff. And just remember, you can't blame 3-year-old or a 5-year-old from doing this stuff, right? They don't know. They don't know any better. All right. And it all comes from a good place. Like it really, really does. But you can't sit there and blame a toddler for creating something like that. Okay. In an attempt to belong and in an attempt to be loved.